Hello, fellow chess assassins and chess friends. Know that in this defense, the e4 square is a very valuable square for black, especially for a knight post. However, even if black can manage to get a bishop on e4, then that piece will be beautifully placed. And if you continue watching this video about a game that was played between two of some of the world's most renowned players, you will see why. This is the classical continuation. The classical continuation for white and the Petrov occurs after the e-pawns are traded and white follows up by playing the pawn from d2 to d4. Both sides castle. c4. Now, of course, the first player wants to try and undermine the knight on e4. But watch how black continues to support the knight's post with other pieces. And after the first knight moves from e4, black will develop the other knight from black will develop the other knight to f6 via d7 and will occupy the e4 square with that knight. Now the move played in the game was queen to b3, but perhaps white could have gone for this line, knight to g5, with the idea of rook e8, bishop takes e4, d takes e4, followed by knight c3. And after knight a6, knight on g takes e4. Trade of minor pieces, but probably wasn't too fond of bishop takes h2 check, a little tactical trick. For example, after king takes h2, then queen h4 check, and black regains the piece on e4. So taking the moves back, queen to b3 was played, and the game continued with queen d7. Now queen takes b7 was played, but I looked at a line starting with knight takes e4. Now this seems to me a little unclear. For example, after d4, queen takes b7, c takes d3, and queen takes a8. I don't know, maybe rook takes f8 check, and king h7, and now king f1. And bishop c4 check, king g1, bishop d5, and the moves are repeated. But Queen takes b7 was played, and the game continued. Knight takes f2. Bishop takes h7 was played. Of course, you can't play king takes f2 because after bishop takes g3 check, the queen will be lost on b7. So bishop takes h7 check, king takes h7, and now queen takes a8. Knight h3 check, king g2. And after queen e6, queen d3 is played by force to stop the queen from coming to e2. For example, if knight on e to f3, then queen e2 check, king h1, king steps off the diagonal, a4 with the idea of lifting the rook to a3, knight f4, g takes knight, and what's to stop the mate on g2? Or, for example, after queen takes b8 check, bishop takes b8, knight to h4, then black wins by queen e1 check, and after knight f1, queen takes f1 is checkmate. So the only move in the position is queen to d3, and the game continued with bishop to f5, queen f1. Now black buys this time to develop the other knight. Knight d7, knight on e to f3, knight f6, and knight g1 was placed to try and dislodge the knight. King steps off. Now after this time, the players left their seats and returned, and they were about 1 hour, 1 minute, and 48 seconds into the game. And after returning, Hikaru played queen to e2, and the game continued with knight e4. a4 was played, but let's say knight takes h3 was played, then after bishop takes h3, king g1, bishop to g4, queen e3, knight takes c5, and after queen takes e6, knight takes e6, and the problem with this line is that the pawn on d4 cannot be saved. Black will capture the pawn on d4 and will have two beautifully placed pawns on the C and D files, and having the two bishops, which is a static advantage. So going back, a4 was played, and after this move, now this move, bishop takes g3, strikes me as a real computer brilliancy. And only a few strong players who find this move will probably miss the complete follow-up. They would then put the position in a program like Hierarchs or AlphaZero or even Stockfish, who would find the whole combination instantly. This was played in the game, and after h takes g3, knight f4 check, sacrificing another piece, pawn takes f4, and now queen g6. Now there are three moves that white can make here, maybe even four, but none of them are too good except one. If king to f3, then queen to g3 is checkmate, so that's not a good move. If king to h2, queen g3, king to h1, and white is forced to give up the queen. So going back, so the move that was played was king to f1, and the game continued with knight g3, forking the king and queen, king e1, knight takes e2, and knight takes e2. Bishop g4, rook a3, bishop takes e2 was played. But I looked at a couple of other lines. For example, if queen to e6 was played with the idea of double attacking the knight, then knight f3 and queen e4, rook c3, and if bishop takes, then rook e3. Queen c2, rook takes f3, queen takes a4, and the line goes something like this. Rook takes a5, queen b7, king to f2, now I didn't explore this line. I stopped about right at this point. I don't know. Maybe this is something you can look at later and set this position up, and you can explore this later. Or queen to c2, then rook c3. Queen takes d4. Knight takes c6, queen e4 check. Bishop e3. Okay, going back, let's get back to the game. Bishop takes e2 was played. King takes e2, and now queen g1. And the game continued with knight b3, queen g2 check, king d1, queen f3 check, and king to c2. Now, king c3. Now, right after Hikaru moved the king to c3, he looked right over at Nepomniatchi, giving him the kind of look that says, well, what are you going to do now? You have my queen. Now finish the game. Take a look. Look here. Look at the photo. You see that look? And after he gave him that look, then Nepomniatchi had an expression on his face. Now I want you to see the expression on his face. Just gazing up into the solar eclipse. Okay, let's continue. Queen f3 check, king c2, queen e4 check, king c3, queen f3 check. Hikaru is saying, I'm not going anywhere else. I'm not doing anything different. I'm going to keep moving to c2 and c3 until you do something different. Oh boy. King c2, queen e4 check, king c3, and I don't know, maybe a lot of people found this humorous here. But after this move, both players shook hands and agreed to a draw. Hey, thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for my next video. Thanks.